Hello everyone, welcome to our panel on hybrid casual genre. Today we will dive deep into the differences between hybrid casual and hybrid casual with Chris, Fahad, and Atilla. So guys, can you please start introducing yourself? Please, you can start, Fahad.
Oh, absolutely. My name is Fahad Sulaiman. So I worked in the industry in a few different roles, but the more pertinent ones here are going to be game design and business development. I worked in a few roles where we had to come up with a few different ideas for hyper casuals and hyper casuals. It was a collaboration with a few teams. But more recently, I've started delved into business development and sales, and I'm working for these beautiful people over at Playsense. We are a creative digital agency, and we help people with ancillary work, with support stuff in the games industry to get their games into the right hands, whether that be through good trailers, good marketing stuff, good content, key visuals. It's about helping the games get into the right hands. And thank you for having me, and welcome everyone to the call.
Thank you, Fahad. Chris, can you please introduce yourself and the
Yeah,
company?
absolutely. So hello everyone, my name's Chris. I'm based in Victoria near Vancouver. So yes, it's 3 a.m. here, which is lovely. I've been in the industry since about 2014. I've done work in user acquisition, monetization, mediation, publishing, and currently I'm with ByteBrew doing analytics. I've designed and produced and shipped about 20 plus hit mobile games. And regardless of any role that I've worked in, really my single drive has been to support creative. I love games. I love seeing creativity succeed. I love helping people tap into their creativity.
Thank you, Chris. And Atilla, can you please also introduce yourself?
Yeah, sure. Hey, I'm Atilla Kabakcıoğlu. I'm a game designer for almost 4 years. I start from hyper casual, and since from last April, I'm designing only hybrid casual games. Currently working on Lightneer, and hopefully and thankfully made some successful games in the past.
Mm-hmm. Really nice. So lastly, I can introduce myself. It's Ali, and I'm a gamer since I'm like 8. And I'm also a young entrepreneur. I'm currently leading a game tech startup, Ratic. And yeah, so that's everything about me. I think in this panel, we have everyone. We have people from game tech, game design, analytics, and I think it's a good like people to talk about hybrid casual. So the thing is about hybrid casual, in my opinion, no one knows what is hybrid casual actually. So let's start with defining. So I want to ask you, what is hyper casual? What is hybrid casual? What are some like common differences? It is only for introducing the concept to the audience. So we can start with defining. So which one of you want to start?
I mean, I have thoughts I could share, I suppose. I mean, yeah, not to like sort of, take things in a different direction, but I think both of these words, hyper casual and hybrid casual, are kind of nonsense words. I think hyper casual is no more a game genre than indie music is a music genre. And it's something that advertising companies came up with to define a business model more than anything else. And I think, in what allowed hyper casual to exist were certain market conditions more than anything else. It was possible to acquire, users at extremely low costs, and it was possible to profit strictly off of ad revenue from those users. That is what hyper casual is, more than it is a game genre.
I
If you look at,
agree more with you. So the thing you said is not a like game genre, but a business model. I think it's also like business model like that works. That you are scaling the advertisement machine. So I strongly agree with you.
Yeah, and I think the big difference between hyper casual and hybrid casual is just the changing reality around the genre itself. Right, the low cost installs no longer exist, or the appetite for games that thrive in that business model has dried somewhat, and so there's a greater focus on how users actually engage with games, and it doesn't have to be called. It could be literally any word you want. Hyper casual is just another way of saying action or arcade or RPG or strategy or whatever. There are lessons of games that fit the mobile platform that carry between hyper and hybrid casual. You want low friction. You want very like easy, intuitive to understand games, controls, things like that. But beyond that, I think the major difference is really just a shift in the market around the two genres. And now we see a greater need to focus on engagement because the CPI market has shifted so greatly.
Thank you. Fahad, do you have anything to add?
Yeah, absolutely. I was just gonna jump on there and just say that I agree with the first bit entirely, 100%. I think we're seeing this trend of just video games becoming more and more desegmentized. You see these black and whites between these different genres sort of merging and sort of fading into one another. And I think just as speaking from a more design perspective, I think it's important to give hyper casuals and hybrid casuals a little bit of a definition distinction, just so you can have these conversations more properly. And the way that I understand, or the way that I like to define these games, is to say that a hyper casual is one input, right? You have your tapping, your swiping, your controlling character. It needs to be simple. It needs to be intuitive. It needs to be get in really quick and get out really quick, right? But when you're speaking about hybrid casual, that is an evolution of that based on the trends of the market. What you're essentially doing with a hybrid casual is that you're taking a hyper casual game loop, but you're adding more retention elements of like mid-core elements onto it for around the meta loop around the game. The core loop remains the same of a hyper casual, but you're adding more attention, more engagement, more agency for players. And this naturally just allows for a lot more room for designers to create new genres, new ways of engagement, and for monetization methods to be set up, like you see in-app purchases, for example, being a lot more prevalent in hybrid casuals, and so on. But yeah, I completely agree with Chris.
I think, like in my opinion, there is like one sharp differences between hyper and hybrid casual genres. Hyper casual is about business development, but hybrid casual is about product development and game development. What you do in hyper casual is only decreasing the day of development, decreasing the initial investment, so you can produce more and more prototypes. Then you test the prototypes, then you kill 99 of them, then you just like go with the for 1%. But in hybrid casual, you focus on your product, you try to make it better, you try to like listen your audience and try to understand what they want to see and what they want to play. So you constantly update, you constantly like add something new. There's one sharp difference I see.
Well, isn't that interesting though? Because like, why would you not pay attention to your players just because your game is hyper casual, is of a different genre, right? Like, I mean, it's okay. I'm just saying, but like, well, what would allow for that to even happen? Because like, I don't think anybody starts making games, because like you say you've been playing games since you're 8 years old. Same here. I think everybody kind of starts around that same age and they're like, oh, wow, this is amazing. And then they realize that they could potentially have a career doing something they love. And they're like, oh my God. And I don't think any of us, and please correct me if I'm wrong, had that moment at 8 years old, picking up a hyper casual arcade game and being like, oh man, I got to make the next whatever, Cal Masters or something like that, right? So yeah, I just think it's so interesting that hyper casual as a genre allowed for this disregard of player engagement for so long, right? And now we're like, oh, we have to pay attention to the player. I think you always did, right? You always did. And if you don't see the initial results that you needed or expected right away and are willing to abandon that project. I mean, I've done publishing, I've killed 99% of prototypes, and I've killed many prototypes that somebody else then put the time into like nurturing and they brought that game to life, right? So I think like it isn't a genre definition of how much you're willing to put into your game. It's more of just a measure of a developer's own vision against like what the market's saying around them more than anything else. I know that's a bit of a divergent or whatever, but yeah, I take umbrage with the idea that we can just like cast our players aside regardless of genre. So I wanted to like come in with that.
Yeah, just on that note, I think that's a very like for lack of a better word, it's a very reactionary take on how things have gone down. It's very easy to look back and be like, okay, this is what happened and this is what's how to predict things in the future as well. But I think that's how hyper casual sort of what was going on in the last, well, not the last 18 months, but before, like, let's say more than a year ago. It was very KPI driven. It was very just put everything up. It was see what works, what doesn't work, kill 90%, work on the 10%. And now we're seeing a lot more creativity almost. We're seeing a lot more people being more engaged with the game. They won't push out a prototype in 1 week. They'll be like, no, let's take 2 weeks, 3 weeks, 4 weeks. Let's polish it up. Let's make it properly engaging and then release to the public. So yeah.
Thank you. Attila, do you also want to share some of your insights with us?
Actually, I think that's the being the worst part of the being last speaker, because everybody says amazing things and you're just agreeing them, okay, they say everything I'm going to say, so what I'm going to say. So I would say in game design perspective, hyper casual games are, a hit and run games. It's very quick dopamines. You just play, go and out. So that's very good for daily life. But when we switch to hybrid casual games, especially on development side, I can give more attention to detail. So I don't need to restrict myself with being fast and just fast and less detailed. But now I can give the details I want. I can make the meta elements better, and this, I think, allows me as a game designer to create better experiences for the players, because now I can think better for them because I have enough time for them. Because otherwise on hyper casual games, it's approximately 1 or 2 weeks, which is kind of impossible to create a new and unique experience within those
days.
in
3 or 4 days. I even heard something they were hits in US and globally. They were
most of the games usually nurturing and be in a very good position after maybe 5 or 6 months after their launch, maybe soft launch or global launch. So I think it's a very long game, and at least with hybrid casual games, we can start this race more ready than we are, because we need to also think ahead of hours, so we can make the meta about it, monetization about it. And I will say, I'm echoing the other amazing feedbacks a lot, so I'm just going to cut here.
Thank you for sharing your ideas. And I want to add something and also ask you my other question. So like adding some meta elements, of course, is the core things about hybrid casual genre. But then it puts another thing into the table to discuss how we should balance the accessibility, understandability, and the depth in the game design. So I think it's a problem, since even, for example, we understand something and we understand how to do it, how to play, how to do this thing, but people may not understand, and we need to design the game, we need to design any product for the dummies person in our audience. So my question is how we should balance the accessibility and the depth in the game design if we want to develop hybrid casual genres. You can also continue, Attila, if you want.
Of course. I would say a great FTUE is the best way to go to accessibility, I would say, because if the players doesn't understand how to play your game, so it doesn't matter what kind of meta elements you have, what kind of depth you have, because they won't go in there. So the moment we solve the FTUE or onboarding or tutorial issue, the rest is smooth like a butter usually. And I will say how to balance the depth and the accessibility is that, at least as a game designer perspective, my mind can go too deep, venture too wild. Oh my God, we can add this, we can do that, we can do this. So I will say a good thing.
And then it's a PC game. Then it turns into a PC game.
I mean, at some point it becomes so much feature-heavy product. So I would say a good team communication and someone who can make the designer, hey, dude, just chill a bit. We can do this later would be good, at least from my side. But otherwise, knowing the audience, knowing what kind of game you want to make, it should be suffice, because it's a long game. We are not aiming to finish everything in 5 weeks, but it's maybe will be done within a year. So the planning, the steps is the probably best thing to do.
Thank you.
Yeah, totally agree. I think, I think it's interesting to accessibility, a certain amount of accessibility is required. Doesn't matter the game genre, right? I think what's interesting about hyper casual is that that is all that was required, right? All you need to do is get somebody in the game for maybe 5 minutes and you're making your money back. Hybrid casual is just putting a game loop or a meta on a hyper casual game. But I think one thing that I've learned, in terms of moving to a more hardcore game experience and coming from hyper casual. So this back here, this is actually data from my game called The World is a Grind. It's a skateboarding game that I've been developing. And when I started making this game, the idea was I wanted to combine Tony Hawk and World of Warcraft, right? I was like, oh, let's mush these together and see what happens. But I also came from a world of hyper casual. So I was like, this has to be massively accessible, it has to be broadly appealing. So, I did things like I made the game super easy. You can't fall down, right? When you try to grind on a surface, you snap to the surface from a ridiculous distance away. And what I found was, as I began building and nurturing the community around this game and interacting with the people that really stick around, and these are the people who are likely going to convert on in-app purchase and hopefully make the game self-sustainable one day. Those are the users that expect a more core experience, right? They don't necessarily want everything to be easy. So I think, one thing that we need to do as we move into hybrid casual, or whatever you want to call the genre, is, a lot of perspective shifts in terms of how we look at, even just the people who play the game, right? I think us calling our players users is indicative of a really bad relationship. There's only a few instances where we call people users of anything, and they're rarely positive. And so I think it's important that we understand that, we have players, we have an audience, and we have to interact and entertain them more than anything else. And so, one thing I've learned in this game is, definitely first-time user experience is key. That that always has to be smooth. But beyond that, the accessibility piece shouldn't always take your impact. The accessibility shouldn't impact your mechanic insofar as it undermines what a core user core player would be. Will keep them around or will make them convert on spending.
That's actually a lovely example from Chris, because I think the one weird way that that answers your question is also to show you that it's you shouldn't just think of so for example, in the last 18 months we've seen a lot of idle elements being adopted to more or less a lot of different genres, and every hyper casual also has an idle element to it. And that is simply because as game designers you think of it and you think, okay, it provides ease of access to players, it provides them with this and this functionality, so it makes sense for an idle game to be there. But you also have people like Chris here who are saying, okay, let's combine skateboarding with World of Warcraft, and you're like, how does that make any sense? But he will come.
Doesn't work, by the way. It's terrible.
But I'm sure there will be creative people who will find these solutions, and they need to fully understand that it's about the game, how the game works, and then applying all these elements on top of it, as opposed to thinking this is a genre trope and this is a genre trope, let's just see whatever comes up. And this is a brilliant way of doing work, I believe.
Thank you. So I will have the challenge of being the last speaker on the topic, on the question, but I will just try to conclude. So it's a line from starting from hyper casual and ends with some console games, AAA games. So let's say we have a dummy Infant Runner game here, and we have Red Dead Redemption 2. In Red Dead Redemption 2, it takes even at least 20 hours to understand the game fully, understand the topic and what is happening here, and even the movements. But in the hyper casual game, it just it takes 3 or 4 seconds. And there are billions of people here. There are millions of people here. Of course, as the CEO of a company, I would choose going to the billion. But of course, it's a line and it's a gradient. Each of them has some benefits and some pros and cons. So I think we need a good balance here. We need to place ourselves in somewhere we can also access at least half of billions, at least like close to billions, but we can add something that also entertains us and entertains our players in a depth sense. For example, my honest suggestion could be we can add some features as some optional things. For example, in the not core feature, in the gameplay, I think it's not really good to add some complex movements and complex functionalities, since it's the main thing that all players they do, like they play it. But for example, you can add a lore, you can add some cutscenes, you can add some other features, collections, etc. But you can keep them optional. So if a player just wants to start the game, also you need to make it easy to start the game. I think it's the key thing to do. They need to they could be starting to play the game at least in the 10 seconds after clicking the icon. But after that, as an optional things, you can add many things, since they couldn't harm them, since they can play and they can play again and play again and play again. So I think this could help game designers to find the right balance, in my opinion. So do you guys anything to add? Do you guys have anything to add to this topic, or should I go to the next question? Okay.
Next question. Let's do it.
Next question. Let's do it. So the benefit, of course, the main benefit that hybrid casual puts into the table is long-term monetization. One of the main benefits, I would say. Since in hyper casual, okay, it's easy to monetize it in a short term, and you really in just 1 week you can start monetize, you can start earn. But in some other genres, it takes some time. But in hyper casual, your players leave your game in 1 day, 2 day, 3 day, 7 day, and in the third day there are no people; they're all gone. So it's a problem, since the user acquisition cost is really pricey these days, since competition is really high. But since retentions are low and people are leaving the game, it's not profitable. Many studios are not profitable anymore, and they are going to bankruptcy. They are getting close. They are running out of their investor money. But hybrid casual also solves this problem by adding some extra features. You can add some long-term monetization. So this was my comments, and now I want to ask you the question: how do monetization strategies differs between hyper casual and hybrid casual genres? You can start, Fahad, if you want.
Yeah, I can take that one. So I think it's a very straightforward thing to understand that the reason for hybrid casuals to exist is to create extra layers of engagement and agency for players within the game on top of a hybrid casual, right? So when you're in the hybrid casual space and players have more agency and they have more choice and they have more impact and they have more agency, they have this opportunity to create to make the experience more personalized to them. They will be willing to spend more money on cosmetics. They'll be willing to spend more money on new characters and new power-ups to play the game their way, right? And this naturally just creates routes for monetization. You create these routes for what will players enjoy? What will they want to extract from our game? And whatever they want, whatever they enjoy, is something that we're going to monetize as well. In the earlier games, in the earlier years, when we had hyper casuals, again, this wasn't the case, right? You could there were only select things that you could monetize, and a lot of it was coming from ads and banner ads and rewarded ads. And now you're seeing a lot more shift towards IAPs. And the more that we sort of, with the player perspective in mind, always when designing these games, I think we can just create lots of these different avenues for monetization that are not predatory at all, that are very much, liked by the player community as well, and that can just exponentially just push this up and balloon this up. And I completely agree with how you sort of defined it and how you sort of put it into words. I couldn't have done it better myself.
And you don't have to depend on only advertising revenue.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah.
It's a brand new thing to hyper casual genre. You can have some other side revenue streams as well.
Absolutely, and you combine that with like like a larger LTV, more attention, and then that just builds up a very nice position to be in.
Attila, do you have anything to add?
I would say I think the new monetization which hybrid casual brings over hyper casual is also it enables us to empower the meta elements if it's done right. For example, with a battle pass system, you can communicate with your players more. You can make them engage more, or maybe a season pass or any other thing. For example, I think it was mock control from Voodoo, which they made a awesome monetization, and it also connects with the games world so well that everything was intertwined and interconnected. So every system was supporting each other. The game design was supporting monetization, and monetization supporting game design back and forth. So this creates, I would say, a very good loop. But in hyper casual games, you 99% rely on ad money because and as you also said, it's not profitable anymore, and it makes people it gives people some bad times these days.
I strongly agree. Yeah, Chris.
So just to jump in, I mean, I think, just to going back to like how you sort of framed the question to begin with, the notion that market conditions on hyper casual have changed. I hate saying hyper casual, by the way, but here we are. So market conditions have changed for games, period, actually. And I think, why we're seeing a shift to from hyper casual to hybrid casual is because there's this potential that things will work out, right? So, because we can introduce, deeper loops, more meta systems, there's more potential for monetization, which means that we might potentially recoup our CPI. CPIs are going up across the board. Like everybody's, buyback windows are getting extended and extended and extended. Whether it's hyper casual or casual, it doesn't matter. You have casual studios now who are like, okay, well, we'll buy on day 365 or we'll buy on day 1080, because at the end of the day, like, the cost is going up, engagement's going down across the board. So I think, it's the need, it's like to survive that is producing the shift towards this genre or these monetization strategies. And I think to Attila's point, what's absolutely critical is ensuring that these systems make sense, right? If we take a hyper casual mindset and we're like, okay, I'm going to take a hyper casual game and then I'm going to put a meta on top of it. I'm going to slap some. It's going to be as much of a mess as the hyper casual game was, right? Like it does require, ability to finely tune these systems. And I think what's really important, and this is going to be a little bit salesy, but like we can't actually execute on surviving as studios in the new market conditions with the tools of the previous era, right? Like a lot of the tools we use are just like, okay, well, what's my day 1? What's my day 3? What's my day 7? That's all I can reliably look at. Like, unless I have a tool that can do this, I can tell me like exactly what users did when they did it and what came before and what came after, then you're going to have a really hard time working with several competing monetization loops, whether it's, bringing somebody into an IAP store, the daily gift, a quest system, a saga map, skins, cosmetics, whatever it may be. And I think, just in terms of like general advice for studios and for designers as they begin tackling these additional systems, one thing, this is a bit of a tangent, but and maybe it answers a separate question you have, but one thing I see a lot of in hybrid casual that I saw a lot of in hyper casual was somebody sees something work and then they just retheme the game, right? And I think you definitely see this with like, say, games My Little Universe and all the games that came afterwards. There's very little done to innovate at the mechanical level on new projects, more being done to innovate at like the theme. So let's change it from, space to farms, or from farms to candy, or from candy to coffee, or just whatever nonsense. But that isn't going to, allow a studio to really push further into that genre. You'll always be, kind of fighting for scraps for the market leaders. And if you look at like Sensor Tower download reports and you throw up, My Little Universe, Moon Pioneer, Z Plays, and then a bunch of others, you'll really see it's a winner takes all market. So it really requires not only innovate, not only like bringing these systems in so that you have a chance to monetize your game against the rising CPI cost, but ultimately like engage users, and you do that through innovating at the mechanical level first and foremost.
Definitely. As you said, like we cannot use the tools of the history to build the future, and we also need to renew our mindset. Like going to the hybrid casual, I think it takes also renewing the mindset. And for example, you need to, as Attila said, like you need to build a game design that connects in-game economics and games, and then they need to all be connected, and they need to be all be rebuilt. So it takes a new type of mindset to go hybrid casual, but I think it's also really.
I'd say an unfamiliar mindset, not so much a new mindset, because games have been made like this since games are being made. I mean,
yes, I say it's a new mindset for hyper casual developers. Since let's say like they are developing hyper casual for 5 years, how do you think they are like thinking? How they are living their lives? They are all about CPIs, retentions, and the things. So those are their mindset, and I believe many hyper casual game developers sees the whole world as hyper casual right now, but it takes renewing in the mindset to go some other categories. For example, I see many hyper casual developers and studios that now develops PC games, console games, some casual games, mid-core games. Since they all are really, in my opinion, they're all bored, and they all really want to explore new opportunities and new horizons. And some people are exploring Web3, some people are exploring PC, mid-core, etc. So, like, another question is, what do you think, like, was there's a rise in the popularity of hybrid casual, of course. What caused it? Was it about low retentions, low engagement? And also another question is, let's make it like two questions in one time. How do retention and engagement compare between hybrid casual and hyper casual? And also, does it also affect the loyalties of players? Since also loyalties are really low in hyper casual category. We like in any other brand types, for example, like lifestyle brands, loyalty is a huge thing, of course. Like in many brands, B2C brands, loyalty is a huge thing. But in casual gaming, for casual gaming brands, I think it's not the most important topic they have. So my question is, what caused the rise of the popularity of hybrid casual? How hybrid casual and hyper casual differs in retention and engagement, and how it affects the loyalty of players? 3 questions in one time. One of you can start. Attila, you can start.
Okay. So actually, I have a wild theory about it. So it's not scientific. It's not based on anything. So let me tell at the beginning. I'm kind of thinking why we are receiving this market change is because hyper casual is around almost 5 years, and so the rise of mobile phones and mobile gaming and such. So at first, we were new to the mobile phone, so we start mobile gaming, but also the old people or not gamer people introduced to those games, and we start to also educate those people with hyper casual games because the entry barrier was so low. They start to play, and it was kind of relatively new, and there was no tons of studios around there, so the gold rush hasn't started yet. So the hyper casual has been born maybe with Rise Up, I would say, and then people saw, okay, there's a gold here, so the gold rush has begun, and everybody started to make games. People played more, and at some point, it was a golden age for maybe 2008, 2009, maybe. But while we make more games, we educate them more. So at some point, it doesn't enough for them because the players saw the same thing over and over again, as Chris stated also, because looking at my mini universe, oh, okay, let's make it, in the farm or, in the underwater. It doesn't work anymore because probably they saw the same game 10 times on their Facebook page or Instagram feed. So they don't play anymore. So I would say that caused this kind of depth resonate with the players more, and I think it also affects the loyalty because, for example, my brother is actually kind of a avid Voodoo fan, and he tracks Voodoo games and he tries to play those games, which also hurts my feelings because he doesn't follow my games that intensely. But oh well, I mean, nothing to do. So I would say this kind of situations will rise the brand loyalty and player behavior significantly. But as I said, it's a wild theory that I came up with. So there's no science behind it. There's no data I can show.
Okay.
I would actually just hop on and say that does not sound like a wild theory at all to me. I think it's quite accurate. That's quite similar to how I perceive things as well. I think when like people usually try and look at trends and be like, okay, so this is what happened, and so this is what's going to happen 3 years from now, and this is what's going to happen 5 years from now. People usually tend to forget that we're talking about people, and people are people. They are the same all across the board, wherever they are or whoever they are. And we're just seeing a trend of people just becoming more comfortable with games. At first, it used to be a novel concept. Games on mobile, okay, they used to be very simplistic. Everything's becoming more of age. Everyone's becoming more relevant, more in tune with everything that's going on. And so when now they're playing games, they want playing games that are more engaging to them. They have more liberty and more agency. So absolutely. And with the second part of your question, I would actually disagree a little bit because I'm of the opinion that there's maybe not the strong, like you can't draw a comparison to like fashion brands or car brands or some other brands to be like the sense of brand loyalty, but there is quite a strong sense of brand loyalty with regards to the products that people are playing. Like Attila mentioned, Voodoo games. If someone plays two games from the Voodoo catalog, when a third one comes out, they can be very sure of what to expect from it. If they know it's something that they enjoy and they've been playing for the past 6 months or a year, then they are most likely going to enjoy that one as well. I think what this sort of leads into is the fact that every game creator, developer, publisher, they should have their own identity behind a game, right? Whenever they create games, you sort of understand, okay, so these people are these kinds of people and they make these kinds of games which are to be enjoyed in such and such manner. That puts your own label on things, and that's what makes you sort of stand out from all the hundreds and different thousands of games on the store. So people can be like, okay, if Attila is making a game, I will wishlist it, I will keep an eye on it, and I will play it for sure.
Thank you. Fahad.
So I mean, to answer the first, so I remember two parts of the three. It was what caused the shift, and then the third part was the loyalty. What was in the middle again?
Like how it compares the retention, engagement, how it compares.
Right, got it. Yeah, so I mean, I think I think a lot of things precipitated the shift away from hyper casual to hybrid casual or more engaging games. I think first and foremost, privacy changes, number one, right? I mean, the subsidized CPI market has been absolutely cratered, so there's a full need to move to games that actually engage users for longer periods of time. So there is an opportunity to, run a business. But I think even without that, eventually there would have been some, user decay, some user boredom. So I think, there's just a certain degree of saturation in the genre itself that, dried out the appetite for those types of games. Now that there's always a time and place to play them, of course. I think, the improvement in technology itself, right? I mean, our phones used to only be capable of so much, and now they're capable of so much more. And there's a lot of opportunity to run, extremely, high quality enriching experiences on your phone. And seeing games like Call of Duty and PUBG and all these first person shooters move over. Although very interestingly, Apex is shutting down on mobile, which I think is, I don't know, bizarre, but whatever. I think a lot of that precipitated the shift. I think also too, Attila, you kind of mentioned this earlier in terms of I mean, you didn't use these words, but I kind of got this sense that there's a soul crushing routine to working in hyper casual when you have to kill so many games, right? And you have to be really quick with your designs and whatnot. I think I've talked to a lot of studios who've explored Web3, who've explored PC, who've explored console, because that's what they want to do, right? Like
Yeah.
they don't want to make what they don't want to make, and
Ask
nobody
any
started.
game designer. They all have a like PC game project.
Yeah, totally.
Yes.
Nobody like and no discredit to the people who love making hyper casual. I've made some hyper casual, but I don't think anybody started in games for hyper casual, right? It's not like what sparked that fire. So I think people see this decline in hyper casual as an opportunity to maybe pursue what it is that they want. How engagement and retention varies. Obviously, people. I mean, we kind of touched on this, but people are moving towards more engaging, higher retaining products out of necessity, if nothing else, right? Like it's just you can't. I mean, I've launched games on like day one, 18%, and it's like back then it worked, but like that would just never fly these days, right? You just can't pull that off. And I think that directly speaks to how we interact with our players and how we understand our player loyalty. And I think you see this a lot in casual games and puzzle games where studios have like every design decision is made around like what will Aunt Betty think, like what will this 50-plus-year-old woman think when she sits down, she plays her game once a day, because that's the user you want, and that's the player you want in your games. And in the more casual and into hybrid casual space, that's what you have to that's who you have to lock down. The person who's going to play your game once a day, they're going to get their little daily missions done, and then maybe eventually buy some IP, participate in events. Those are the people that stick around for years, and I think studios are finally starting to like catch on to that need to focus in on the player at that personal level.
Thank you. So, do you guys have anything to add to this topic, or like I will ask the last question and finalize the topic? Okay, then I'm continuing. So, okay, another question before the last question. We still have time, 90 minutes. So, do you think there was a significant impact that the rise of the hybrid casual made in the industry? Like hybrid casual is a thing of maybe like last year or like at maximum 2 years. So does it make any difference in the industry that like this is significant to all of the people? In my opinion, it just created like fear of being missing out and fear of like being on the left. And it caused many people to think like to explore new horizons, as I said before. So it was a like most significant impact they did into the industry, I see. So do you see any other impacts that did?
I think like sort of just harkening back to something I said earlier, like we definitely see like certain games are really winner takes all in the space, like especially if it's like you want to like lump it into like incremental arcade or whatever you want to call that genre. I think the biggest impact the shift to hybrid casual has been on production itself, just in terms of what gets made. And I've seen studios, watch the market every day, see all the new games that launch. You see studios take that same production mentality, let's hit a bare minimum product. Let's reuse what we can, which makes sense, but it quickly turns into retheming. So it's a farm game, or it's a candy game, or it's a coffee game. But I think that's what I've seen is just that like the amount, like what prototypes are being tried has changed more than like what has truly succeeded, or like the real winners in the space haven't, like in games in general, haven't been studios prototyping for publishers almost ever. Like it doesn't matter if the genre, if it's hyper casual or hyper casual, it's usually the small studios that go super deep on a game, really understand engagement, how their players are interacting with every feature, and then are either able to self-publish or sell that game, or even their studio. Those are the ones who really won, in the last year and a half. But yeah, in general, I think the big impact has just been on like what's being made, not so much on like what's being played, if that makes sense.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, Fahad, you can continue if you want.
Yeah, I was actually gonna answer that question from a player's perspective, actually, because I think it's a very amazing thing to happen to the market, because as players you get access to just so many different kinds of games, and B, because there's so many different game creators out there, you get so let's say I'm looking at a card game with match 3 elements, right? If I want to play a game like that, I will now have access to 20 games, 50 games, 100 games, and the number will always keep going up. And within these games, you'll find these little differences between this game creator does that and this game creator does that, and I can find as a player whatever that is to my fancy. So from a player's perspective, I think this has just been extraordinary for the industry. And as game creators, for people like Attila especially, and like Chris, now that I've heard the Warcraft and skateboarding idea and I can't get it out of my head, is that they get to be super creative. They get to create these experiences that 2 years ago it wouldn't have worked. 2 years ago, these same ideas would have been drafted as been like, they're too complicated, it doesn't make sense, we don't have the right KPIs, we don't have the LTV, we don't have it doesn't work in the market. But nowadays you can see those things to work. You can see more complicated games, more deep games, more engaging games on the market, and just a slew of them.
Mm-hmm. Thank you, Fahad. Attila.
I guess I can take from here. I can answer this question as someone who is in the kitchen and preparing the soup. Is that used to be? It was you try to shoot as much as bullet you can shoot in a very in a very short amount of time. So it was always a race against the clock. So just as you said, make a game in 4 games, shoot it. Make a game in 3 days, shoot it. So it was just we were just shooting blankly, and we were hoping it would hit somewhere. But right now we need to be careful because it's not the money is not pouring here anymore. So we need to be careful with our money. We need to be plan our steps. We need to go slow and surely, because the margin of error is so little right now. So we don't have the luxury of affording 50 not hit game in a quarter or such. So that's why I would say planning ahead, planning the monetization, planning the features, everything also, at least for me, is more thrilling because now I can give more detail, more attention, and more things that I want to give. So I would say that made a huge impact from hyper casual.
Okay, so it you say it converts the way it changed the way like how game studios produce their game. So
yeah.
Right, the way of thinking.
Because it used to be some studios were working paper prototype or sometimes just fixed amount of money. But right now this is not feasible, and as far as I know, most of the publishers are changing their contracts in a very aggressive way. So it's not you can survive with paper prototype model because the amount of time for development is risen significantly, so it's not sustainable. So what
it was quite a wild ride, though, wasn't it? The paper prototype era of 2019 to 2020. Oh my god, so many developers making way too much money off of like that. It was crazy.
I have stories about it actually, but anyway, so yeah. I would say that made the biggest impact, and those who can't, evolve, who can't step up to the change, will perish instantly. They went bankrupt, unfortunately. Of course, it's not something good, but I think it's more like survival of the fittest, kind of Darwinist thing.
Thank you, Attila. Thank you. So we have a question from an audience.
Nice.
From the audience, so we may need to be fast to answer this, but let's try. They say, is hybrid casual now relatively saturated for new studios, from new studios, yes, in my opinion, to develop, or is this still consumer driven with a lot of opportunity if done correctly? I want to start answering, if it's okay. So in my opinion, like, I need to say, companies are not your friends. All of the companies are there for profit, working for profit, is money scaling machines at the very end. So they always like um, obsessed with numbers. That's the way. So the change, the shift in the hybrid casual, of course, it was about the numbers again. It was about their performance indexes, and now why they are building hybrid casual games is that you're not playing as a player. I say you're not playing hyper casual games anymore, and you're not putting your time into them anymore. So they will build, of course, hybrid casual games, but I think like it doesn't mean it is not saturated. It's always saturated. It's an industry, and it will saturate everything you will do. So at the end, of course, all the industries are consumer needs to be consumer driven if it's a B2C industry. So if you play hybrid casual games as the people, if you are going to play hybrid casual games, they need to do it. If you are going to play hyper casual games and you will be happy with it, as you were in the last 5 years, they would be continue developing those games as well. So yeah, that's my opinion. Chris, maybe you can answer.
Yeah, I mean, I guess to very quickly answer the question, is hybrid casual saturated? Yes, 100% it is. Insofar as
By the way, the question
most,
is hybrid casual is saturated.
yes,
Yeah.
well, I don't care what you want to call it. I mean, yeah, hybrid doesn't matter. It's all saturated. Insofar as people look at a game like My Little Universe, right? That's hybrid casual. That's the flagship of hybrid casual. Everybody, started chasing games that were similar to that. Is that saturated? Yes. Another game succeeds, gets called hybrid casual after the fact, and then all the developers try to make different variants off of that, whether off theme or art or whatever, very rarely on mechanic. So, I think, again, to sort of just like wrap the point up, hybrid casual, whatever exists because market conditions have changed and require developers to focus on engagement, right? Engagement is king because, the low cost CPIs that allowed developers to ignore engagement for so long simply no longer exist. And you don't need to limit yourself to a game genre to try to capture engagement, right? And if you are thinking in the lens of, okay, like, is there still an opportunity in hybrid casual? How do I, you're probably working through a feedback loop that includes third parties that are maybe a little bit more removed from the passion that brought you to game development to begin with, right? I think like, probably somebody is telling you the opportunities in hyper casual, is pointing to a bunch of games that work, and is inherently kicking you off on a path that is going to lead to you just making the 5th or 6th best product in the marketplace of that particular genre. So for anybody who's asking, hey, is there an opportunity in hybrid casual? Yes, there's an opportunity in making engaging games always, but don't limit yourself to what a word that somebody made up after they saw a game on the App Store, right? Like it's not a genre. It's just like it's marketing. That's all it is. So yeah, make a good game and you'll be fine. But don't make anything that's being made, like, as a general rule. If you see something, the money has been made, it's over. Innovation is critical, particularly for the prototyping phase. If you're making new games, like, yes, if you're like Tencent or a massive company, you can invest in making a better version of an existing game and outcompete and outmarket. But if you're like everybody on this call and you're scrappy and you want to make your own game and you want to get it out there, you're going to have to be different first, and focus on engagement.
Thank you, Chris. What's your opinion, Fahad?
I was going to say that's actually an amazing point from Chris, because the way that these things need to be set up, and sort of the reason why we're even having this conversation and this question is, are these games too saturated? Well, yes, if your objective is to make a hyper-casual game, then everyone's objective is to create a hyper-casual game because it's super successful, because it's 50% of the revenues from the global game market is the overall gaming revenue. So you're like, yes, this is the most profitable. I'll just make a ton of games and just put them up there. And that's that approach leads to this question. Whereas the right approach should be to forget about a hyper-casual, forget about a hybrid-casual. Think of what makes a game engaging. Think of an amazing idea. Think of something that will engage players. And how you then structure it, what game loops you put in place, what meta loops, what monetization, everything else is entirely secondary. So create a good game first, create a creative game first, and everything else is super secondary. And that's a great way that actually Chris put it, because I was going to take this question in a different route, but after hearing him, I was like, yeah, no, this, absolutely this.
Sorry.
And yeah, Atilla, you are always.
Yeah, I think it's my passive skill. I would say, actually, of course, echoing Chris and Fahad again at some point. So maybe as a new thing at this my addition, I don't think they are saturated because if you make a good game with enough innovativeness and if you balance your cost and development force in a good manner, I think there's still a very open space on the market. There is always be open space in the market as long as it's a free market. So just it's about good idea, enough innovativeness, and a nice team and a production cycle. And then I think even you can make a hyper casual game on number one right now, but it's just about kind of luck, a lot of luck, and a good innovativeness, because I think that's the problem. We forget the innovativeness, being innovativeness, as Chris mentioned over and over again, which is very right, because if you make copycats, then I mean, the winner takes it all, and the rest is just try to eat the crumbles, but it doesn't work.
Yeah, of course. So we are close to the end of our time. Thank you guys for being on the panel. It was really nice for me to discuss a topic that interests me a lot with many open-minded people, and I hope we get together in 2 years to discuss about hybrid casual versus hybrid casual 2 Pro Plus. Was it?
Yeah. What are we going to call that one? Okay, let's come up with it right now. Yeah. Let's say. I remember when hybrid casual was first getting kicked around. I was kicking around the word hyper core. I always like that a lot more personally. I tried to coin that at Big Fest in Brazil in 2018 or 19. So maybe hypercore will have its day. These really core experience.
Hypercore sounds like an anime for some reason.
Yeah, sounds fun. sounds exciting. Yeah, definitely is immediately followed by some sort of special attack. Definitely.
Yeah.
Yeah, you can tell your last words to the audience, then we will close.
Yeah. Oh, go ahead, Atilla. You go first this time.
Okay. I will say thank you for all of you to feed me with your amazing knowledge, because I learned here today a lot, and it was a very big honor for me to be here and make this be a participant of this panel. So I would say thank you for my closing words.
Thank you, Atilla. And it was, by the way, since it's the end, I can tell it was the meta functionality I put into the panel that you always the last person. So sorry about that. It was hybrid panel. It was hybrid panel. Go on, please.
Obviously, thank you so much for having me to the event, and Atilla or Ali, great job moderating. It was very last minute, and it's very weird doing this at 3 a.m, but almost better. Less filters. I think all conference talk should happen for people at 3 a.m. We'll get right to it. But I think just for anybody watching live or watching the recording, no matter what you call it, the shift is to engagement. And to understanding players, how they engage with your game, pardon the pitch, but again, unless your analytics platform can do something like my background can do, I think you're going to be ill-equipped to understand how it is players are engaging with games. So I encourage you to check out ByteBrew.
Mm-hmm. Thank you, Chris, for being here. And Fahad.
Yeah, I think I'll quickly do my wrap up as well. First of all, I'm really grateful for being here, for having this opportunity to speak with people like Chris and Atilla and Ali. Thank you so much for moderating so well. If I had one last thing that I could sort of leave everyone with there today, it's gonna be landing on the same wagon again, but it's essentially that game makers right now, guys, you have the most opportunity that you've ever had to get into this space. You have a lot more avenues for creativity, for monetization, for setting your games up, for teams, for the technologies you're using, for the platforms you're publishing it to. So this is the golden time of game creators. So feel free to spread your wings. Feel free to let your creativity free and see where it takes you. Don't follow trends. Create trends.
Thank you, Fahad. And thank you everyone for listening our panel on differences between hyper-casual and hybrid casual gaming. Now I believe there's a coffee break. Then after that, you will be watching another amazing panel. So yeah, thank you again for watching.
Yeah. Ciao, guys.